An expert, great friend, joining us now, Ken Cuccinelli, former acting deputy secretary for the Department of Homeland Security. Wonderful to see you, Ken. Thanks for coming on. So,
yeah, good to be with you. My pleasure.
You know, if you weren't lucky, you just heard our clip. If you were lucky, you could hear the whole press conference. Ha ha ha. Just blame Trump.
Yeah, no, I heard it.
Just blame Trump, right? Like the vaccine, just blame
Right.
Trump. Like the economy, just blame Trump. What's your you are so heavily involved in border policy. What's your take on this?
Well, first of all, you remember all that plagiarism that Joe Biden was famous for, all those, through many years of his public time. It seems it's continued, the same habit. And this lying is unbelievable, and he did it brazenly. This is a guy who effectively tore up about a dozen international agreements that President Trump's administration had gotten with Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador for security, to fight illegal immigration, to work on asylum, to do information sharing, all of that shredded, ripped up by Joe Biden within days of becoming president. And then they say they inherited a broken system. No, they intentionally destroyed what we built. And it's easy to destroy, Larry. It is hard to build. And you know that, and I know that. And all they've done is destroy. That's been their policy. It's 2 months of destruction of several years of building. And dealing with a problem that Republican and Democrat presidents alike before President Trump had not confronted, President Trump did, to the benefit of this country, and we did it effectively in the face of massive Democrat congressional opposition. They stopped us every way they could. And by the way, can you imagine if we didn't let them into our facilities for 2 months when the border was being rushed?
Go crazy.
They'd have gone berserk.
Gone berserk.
Absolutely berserk.
Ken Cuccinelli, what about, didn't Team Biden eliminate the Mexico detain system? And didn't they turn catch and deport back to catch and release, which is essentially an open border policy?
Yes.
And what are they going to do about it in the last minute? We need to devote lots more time to this, you and me. But I didn't really hear Biden. He's got a plan, but he won't let us into the detention centers to see what's happening, whether it's a health problem or a security problem or a legal problem. What's he going to do? I didn't get that part.
Yeah, they're tough on us on COVID, but not in these facilities. They invite people in with an international strains of COVID. They're testing over 10% COVID positive and then shipping them around the U.S. There is no plan. What they're doing here looks to you and me like a mistake, like an error. This is their plan, Larry. They're importing future voters, putting up amnesty bills in Congress, and putting up an election bill that'll register all these folks to vote, even though they're illegal aliens. That's the plan. So they don't intend to undo this.
And
this is intentional.
Doing it by busting the filibuster and 51 votes reconciliation.
Senator Ted Cruz, good to have you, sir. Kamala Harris's appointment to take over the border. Leader McCarthy over on the Senate side, he said that VP Harris is now the point person for the Biden border crisis. Then Senator Harris, when she was senator, compared ICE to the KKK, introduced legislation to reduce detention beds by 50%, said CBP, holding kids longer than 72 hours, was inhumane. Does she stand by all of that is his question. I'm sure you have questions too, but I also would ask you, should she be given a chance to do this and see how she does?
Well, I got to say my reaction to that appointment is wow, Joe Biden really doesn't like Kamala Harris. This border crisis is the biggest political mess Joe Biden has. It threatens to derail the entire administration. So what does he do? He looks to his vice president and says, you take it. It's your problem now. And listen, unfortunately, she is not going to be able to solve this crisis. Why? Because they've created this crisis, and they've created this crisis because of their political partisan commitments that they can't back away from. So why are we having this crisis at the border? Because when Joe Biden got elected, the first thing he did was stop construction of the border wall. He reinstituted catch and release, the failed policy, so that now when we detain illegal immigrants, we let them go, we give them a court date sometime in the future, and many of them never show up. And he ended the Remain in Mexico policy, which was this incredibly successful foreign policy accomplishment, where the Trump administration had negotiated with Mexico that illegal immigrants from Central America would remain in Mexico while their asylum proceedings were moving forward. All of those had produced real success. But because the Democrats campaign on saying ICE is evil, securing the border is wrong, because the Democrats support open borders, Kamala Harris doesn't have anything to do other than go down there and let everybody go. I mean, that's the only option that is consistent with the political promises she's made. And I'll tell you, representing the state of Texas, we are seeing illegal immigrants being released in Harlingen, Texas. The illegal immigrants they're releasing are testing positive for COVID-19 at a 7 times higher rate than the U.S. population. It is a humanitarian crisis, it's a public health crisis, and it's a national security crisis.
They blame the Trump administration. I'm sure you've heard that already. You're going there tomorrow. Senator Corden, your fellow Texas senator. When do you think Kamala Harris goes, or President Biden?
I have no idea. They asked Kamala a few days ago if she was going, and she just laughed at that question. Actually, tonight I'm headed down to the border, and I'm bringing 18 senators. So I'm bringing 18 senators to go down to the border. We're going to the facilities. We're meeting with the Border Patrol. We're meeting with the Border Patrol Union, who I know very well. We're going to inspect those facilities and see them directly. And I'll tell you, we invited Fox News to embed with us. We invited ABC News to embed with us. And the Biden administration has said, hell no. They will not allow reporters anywhere near. So they're blocking. When 18 senators show up, the Biden administration is saying no reporter can show up because, and this is their argument, and it really is laughable, they say that reporters, there's too big a risk of COVID. That if there's a cameraman, suddenly it's a COVID crisis. Never mind the Donna facility, which they won't allow reporters into. The Donna facility, its capacity is 250 people. It currently has nearly 4,000 people in it. That is 1,500% in excess of its capacity. There's a reason they don't want reporters in there. It's not COVID. The reason they don't want reporters in there is because they don't want the American people to realize the absolute train wreck of a policy that the Biden administration is implementing.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Joe Biden finally gave his first press conference this afternoon. No president has ever waited this long to answer questions in public. And as of just yesterday, we were not still entirely sure it would happen. A reporter at the White House saw Biden ambling around and asked him if he was ready for his first press conference. What press conference? Biden replied. Apparently, in the end, somebody told him. A staffer pointed Biden toward the tape mark on the floor and gave him a shove. Biden shuffled forth and started talking and pausing and then talking some more and then pausing. You've heard the term pregnant pause. Joe Biden's pauses were third trimester quintuplets. These pauses were ready to burst. Here's one of them.
So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway, we're going to get a lot done.
Got that, America? We're going to get a lot done. A lot. Of course, we'll get a lot more done and confuse far fewer people if we go ahead and read our policy positions from small pieces of paper that others have painstakingly prepared for us. That way we won't lose consciousness in mid-sentence or accidentally start a war. So when the topic of North Korea arose, Joe Biden knew exactly what to do. He found his piece of paper and he started reading the words that had been written on it.
We're consulting with our allies and partners, and there will be responses if they choose to escalate. We will respond accordingly. But I'm also prepared for some form of diplomacy.
It's got to be pretty intimidating to the North Koreans, who, of course, are watching it in real time. They've got nukes in Pyongyang now, and that means they probably have cable TV, too. Don't underestimate these people. They're crafty. Of course, the North Koreans were already deeply afraid of Joe Biden. They know that he means business. They remember the time that Biden beat the crap out of the entire Kim family with a chain. He and Nelson Mandela back in '86. You've heard the story. They've lived it. It's part of their lore. And now this. North Korea is facing not just Joe Biden's masculinity, but an entire piece of paper with instructions on it that Joe Biden is perfectly willing to read anytime he needs to. That cue card is Joe Biden's secret weapon in the fight against nuclear proliferation. You can breathe easy, America.
One place where US President Joe Biden should be commended is his capability to equally destroy the US's domestic as well as foreign policy. At a time when the USA is facing a geopolitical crisis at multiple fronts and a much more aggressive China, North Korea over the weekend launched several short-range ballistic missiles. South Korea revealed that 2 cruise missiles were fired into the Yellow Sea early on Sunday from Oncheon in North Korea. What could be considered a show of confidence and military strength by the North Korean regime in the backdrop of the recently concluded Alaska summit between China and the USA, Pyongyang fired non-ballistic cruise missiles, sending ripples across the world. However, more surprising than the actions of North Korea was the meek response of the US president. Responding to the reporters' questions on Tuesday night, Biden said, "We have learned that nothing has changed." When asked if he considered the test a provocation, Biden said, "No. According to the Defense Department, it's business as usual. There's no new wrinkle in what they did." The Biden administration's North Korea policy is through and through a failure, and the comment made by Joe Biden is the latest addition to the list.
One of our biggest problems is voting. It's getting harder and harder to vote. There are some people in America, bigots, let's just call them what they are, who are demanding that we know voters' identities before we let them choose our government. They want people to show IDs at the polls, if you can even imagine, in 2021. These bigots, Joe Biden explained today, are Republicans.
And so I'm convinced that we'll be able to stop this because it is the most pernicious thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle.
Jim Eagle? Who's Jim Eagle? A comic book hero from the 50s? Some kind of dog-faced pony soldier? We didn't know who Jim Eagle was, so we went scurrying to our Google machines to look it up. Then we realized, duh, we're being way too literal here. It's an analogy. Crow, eagle. They're both birds, but an eagle is much bigger than a crow. That means that asking people to show a driver's license when they vote is much more racist than segregation and lynchings. Segregation and lynchings were Jim Crow. Voter IDs are Jim Eagle. Way worse. And that makes sense when you think about it. Most black people don't have government-issued IDs, and that's why they can't drive cars, or fly in airplanes, or hold jobs, or stay in hotels, or go to the doctor, or cash checks, or sign rental agreements, or buy homes, or open bank accounts, or purchase Sudafed at CVS. Black people can't do any of those things because they don't have IDs. Millions and millions of them don't have IDs, and it's sad, as Joe Biden often points out. Now, you might think the solution to this tragedy would be make it easier for Americans to get IDs. Subsidize them if you have to. No, Joe Biden has a better idea. Just make sure that no one ever has to show an ID in order to vote. And that way, the millions and millions and millions of African Americans who somehow don't have IDs won't feel bad or left out. They still won't be able to drive cars or have jobs or bank accounts or live anywhere, but at least they can vote a lot, and the rest of us won't be racist. Problem solved. Now, wait a second, you might be thinking. Wasn't unity the theme of Biden's last campaign, the one that just ended in November? Yes, it was. But that wasn't enough unity. There is more unity on the way, ladies and gentlemen. Bucket loads of it, tractor trailer loads full. Imagine every swimming pool in Malibu topped to the brim with unity, and then add all the pools in Bel Air. That's how much unity we're talking about. And by unity, of course, we mean policies that make Americans hate each other much more than they ever have. That's what Joe Biden has given us so far, and soon we'll have more.
The third reason I said I was running was to unite the country. And generically speaking, all of you said, no, you can't do that. Well, I've not been able to unite the Congress, but I've been uniting the country based on the polling data. We have to come together.
Oh, the polling data, the real currency of Washington. Now, we haven't checked the polling data ticker today, But we have to tell you that we approach this one specific claim with some degree of skepticism. Not every one of Joe Biden's unifying policies has fully unified the country just yet. There are still some crotchety holdouts deep in the American interior who aren't fully sold on his fresh new program of being humiliated, berated, disarmed, and taxed into poverty and powerlessness. Those people are bigots, obviously. They're probably friends with the snake-handling evangelical freaks who complain when some dude shows up at their 8-year-old daughter's locker room. But whatever, you can't please everyone. You know who you can please, though, if you're Joe Biden? The media. The reporters are highly pleased. They're one group that remains utterly united in their love and support of Joe Biden, and the polling data show it. Joe Biden knows this well, but he's not pandering to reporters. Joe Biden is bigger than that. It's not like the Washington Post is a credit card company from Delaware. He doesn't need to slobber on them. So today, Joe Biden explained that despite his massive successes on our southern border, the ones you're seeing on TV, he is not ready to show reporters exactly what he's doing down there. That's for him to know and them to find out.
We haven't seen the facilities in which children are packed together to really give the American people a chance to see that. Will you commit to transparency on this issue?
I will commit to transparency, and as soon as I am in a position to be able to implement what we're doing right now.
Well, that's kind of unusual. You don't often hear a politician admit that he's rejecting openness and embracing secrecy. They usually lie about that, but not Joe Biden. Biden tends to say the unspoken things out loud. We're as opaque as a shower curtain, he told the press corps today, and there's nothing you can do about it. As Joe Biden just told us, he's going to get a lot done. And not just in the next 4 years, by the way, but in the 4 years after that. Joe Biden is running again. He told us that today, too. By the end of his second term, Joe Biden will be 86 years old. That's a full decade past the life expectancy of the average American man, which, for the record, Joe Biden has already exceeded. But there's nothing average about Joe Biden. Time improves him. Like certain varieties of artisanal cheese, Joe Biden is meant to be aged. He just gets sharper and more pungent. His next campaign will be even tastier. Watch.
Have you decided whether you are going to run for re-election in 2024? You haven't set up a re-election campaign yet, as your predecessor had by this time.
My predecessor needed to. My predecessor. Oh, God, I miss him. No, the answer is yes. My plan is to run for re-election. That's my expectation.
My plan is to run for re-election. Now, we weren't in the room when Joe Biden said that, but according to those who were, there was an audible gasp of horror from behind the curtain. Sources said it sounded very much like Kamala Harris. We can't confirm that, but we can tell you that Joe Biden has already picked a theme for his next campaign. The theme is unity.